Parasites are sly, using the cleverest of ploys to stay alive while destroying almost everything in their tracks. Parasites have no mercy. They live in and feed off their host, and could be the leading cause of most disease and ailments we experience. Undoubtedly, you have them living inside you right now.
Surgeons thought that she had a brain tumor.
But when they opened her up, surprising find.
A life temporarily hijacked by a parasite.
You know what they say? An apple a day keeps the doctor away.
So this tapeworm, when you actually look at it, has one small little head up here that we've got in the little plant. And the tapeworm head has a little sucker on it, and it sucks and holds on to you right there.
Dr. Kenny Bond told InsideEdition.com about a patient who pulled, get this, a 5-foot-long tapeworm out of his gut.
A microscopic parasite that's becoming a summertime rite of passage is once again making Americans sick. And doctors say it's a nasty one, causing flu-like symptoms.
This morning, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is responding to a report that a parasite was found in his brain more than a decade ago.
Doctors are investigating a medical mystery in Australia after a worm was removed from a woman's brain.
The doctor told me what he was going to do, and he said, well, there's good news and there's bad news. He said, what do you want to hear first? I said, well, give me the bad news. Let's do that, and then you can give me the good news last, and I'll feel a little better. He said, all right. He said, number one, we have to remove your stomach and esophagus. But he said the good news is that if you survive the operation and survive the chemotherapy, we'll put a tube in, and you use a blender to, now as your stomach, they'll grind up all your food, and people that do that seem to live longer. I said, well, the good news? He said, well, that's the good news. I said, well, what's chemotherapy? And he looked at me, and without batting an eye, instantly he said, it's FDA approved. So I tried to get out of him what chemotherapy truly was. He wouldn't tell me, so I wanted to see it. And when I saw the bag, it looked terrible. And there was a red skull and crossbones on the back of the bag, and the statement said, under no circumstances, even when this bag is empty, must it be cut open, death can ensue. And I said, well, you mean you're going to pump all this stuff into me, and then what's left will kill you? And I said, the address here is Missouri. I said, I'm going to Missouri. I walked out, walked right down, spent the $1,000 for a ticket to Missouri and back. Went to Missouri, and they wouldn't let me in the chemotherapy plant. I had to hire an attorney. There was a lot of kerfuffle. I finally got in. It cost me quite a bit of money to get into that plant. They were very nice. I got a full, complete rundown on chemotherapy. I have the chemical makeup of chemotherapy. They gave it to me. And I walked out with my attorney. It was all done and said. We left, and guess what? I was no further ahead because I'm not a chemist. I don't know what this chemical breakdown is. So I went to a compounding pharmacy knowing that they had a chemist in staff. And the man looked at it, and he looked at me and frowned and said, well, this is part of the war division, the chemical department of the armed forces. I said, really? He said yes, and told me it was mustard gas.
A warning sign should be posted beside them.
After hearing that they were planning on pumping mustard gas through me, I decided to put an ad in the paper, and it read like this. My name's Wayne Rowland. I'm just like you. I have heard that there's a cure for disease that's been suppressed. I have cancer. I'm not going to accept the modality of the day. I need to know if there's a cure that's suppressed out there, and I offer a $10,000 reward. I literally received thousands of calls, but one man impressed me. One man. And he said, there's not one cure for cancer that's been suppressed, there's been 5. Which one do you want to know about? I said, whatever one works. He sent me to somebody that had an original Rife Ray unit.
Everything in creation spins and vibrates. Everything has its own prime resonance frequency, and this is why once we can identify the resonance frequency of a bacterium or an atom or whatever it is, we can then manipulate that object with its prime resonance frequency. Sound is the source of all creation. Sound and resonance is responsible for everything.
And I used it. 3 months later, the cancer was gone. So was my arthritis. So I started doing research into the Rife technologies, and I found another man who really knew quite a bit about Rife and had all the frequencies and everything, and I went to see him, and he became a friend of mine. His name is John Sajeka, and John Sajeka showed me that I wasn't using the Hertz rates to get rid of cancer at all. And that upset me, because I paid good money for this. Now, and why did the cancer leave? And I looked at the Hertz rates that I was using, and lo and behold, there were Hertz rates to get rid of worms and parasites. It turned out that the lead poisoning was giving a bed for parasites to breed in furiously, and it was their waste that had given me cancer. I was absolutely in shock. And the more research I did and the further I got into this, the more I found out that pretty much all disease is caused by worms and parasites.
We have a success rate from around 70%, 60, 70% in cancer versus a 3% of standard oncology. Maybe some people should listen to that. And the success on the corona, well, it has been 99.3% and over 1,132 people. So not bad. Oh, I say, try to improve that. No, so, and when you say, okay, why does it work on corona? Because it eliminates the spike in the standard corona. And does it work on the vaccine too? Yes, it eliminates the same spike. It's the same spike, you know, you just have to drink it 3 months and that's it. And then you will have recoveries from all these problems with the spike protein, what we are seeing right now. Cancer, Guillain-Barré, pericarditis, myocarditis.
When you come in the entrance, the girl in the reception, she had a glioblastoma multiple. 6 times, I think.
Multiform stage 4, yeah?
Several brain cancer, let's say. And now, after 1 year, she's fine. She's working for us, obviously. We have many cases. It is our normal. Our new normal is that, imagine, for example, you have medicine before antibiotics, where the people died of it. That's a boy. Exactly. He had a neuroblastoma. Wouldn't even move. So really hard. No one survived that.
Especially when they're young as well. Like their fatality rates when they're young are even greater.
Much higher, because the cell growth is much faster in kids, and the parents are fantastic. This boy just was chlorine dioxide, basically some seawater, and the plasma drug. That's all what he had.
And so the body, when it has enough energy, it will heal itself. The body is a self-healing principle, you know, always. We all have been ill and we're not dead. Okay? And so how does it work? Well, because if you have enough energy, body builds up energy, resources again, then it comes back. It's not only food. No, it's to burn is the most important. The part is oxygen, because we can be 1 month without food or 3 days without water, but only 3 minutes without oxygen. So every cell needs oxygen constantly, and this substance gives oxygen in many different levels. It gives charge and oxygen. Mine gives both. Oxygen, how much? Well, if you have a standard protocol C, for example, this is here's mine. Well, it's 1 liter with 10 milliliter. And when you calculate it, you can say, how much do we have of oxygen in this liquid? You know, it's, if you calculate it, it's 10,700,000 10,700,000 oxygen molecules, now hold yourself, for each red blood cell.
This was our lowest point. The truth about parasites has had a profound impact on my health and the health of my family. Since I was a child, I had many different health conditions. My mum rushed me around to different doctors, trying to find solutions, trying to find a way to help her son, her darling son, from all the things that were happening, the things that were out of her control, out of my control, that were everything from Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, Ross River fever, glandular fever, Lyme disease. As I became an ambassador for World Vision and did a lot of study actually as a young teen into third world, developing world issues, and I then at age 17 became an ambassador for World Vision and had the privilege of traveling to Tanzania in Africa with a team of other youth ambassadors with World Vision to investigate. And while I was doing one of these trips, I got a horrific parasitic infection that caused a slew of health issues. So early on in life, I started to understand that this was a real issue, but certainly one that I thought was related to the developing world.
The CDC reports right now 1/3 of Americans have parasites, and yet not a single medical doctor in America even knows parasites exist in this country. So I find it very interesting that everyone thinks they're just a developing world issue. They're not. They do exist here in America, and it's been amazing to watch a lot of medical doctors around the world get excited in the last 5 years about the reality that anti-parasitic herbs and drugs can cure most, if not all, cancer types of tumors, masses, no matter what stages.
I really didn't know a lot, and so that also remained as a lingering issue. So my health continued to have the stacking of problems. Fast forward, my wife and I get married. We, for years, are finding that we're not falling pregnant, we're not trying, nor are we careful, and so we started to wonder, do we have an issue here? And on top of that, the reason why my wife and I were not actively planning to have a child was because our health was so bad. I often wondered, well, what would happen if my wife had a child? What would be the outcome? If I could get to the bottom of this, if I could discover this, then I could turn this around. I could get to the root. To fully understand where we are going, we need to know where we started. Dr. Lee Merritt has done some amazing research into the world of parasites and how the medical industrial complex has led us astray.
All right, I'm Dr. Lee Merritt, and I was a classically trained physician. I graduated from the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry. And to be honest, I'm an orthopedic spine surgeon by profession. So I didn't expect to be in a discussion about parasites and viruses. But what if I told you that cancer, acne rosacea, multiple sclerosis, and rheumatoid arthritis, 4 different diseases in 4 different areas of medicine, what if they can all be treated with parasite medication? We grew up believing that there was infectious disease that was airborne. We heard about the pandemic of 1918. We came up believing that we got sick because of these crazy little invisible virus particles. Well, that turns out not to be true. So what we are dealing with is an intentionally misinformed public who has been lied to by big pharma.
People also from transmitting the disease.
And the chances are very likely that you'll not be able to transmit it to other people.
Yes, it will protect you, but honestly, it's not for you. It's so you don't kill other people. It's so you don't spread it to other people. 114 million Americans, nearly half the adult population in this country, has had a vaccine shot already. 114 million of us have had it. The number of people who have died from getting the shot is 0.
There's a distinct anti-science flavor to this. So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. Because I represent science.
If you're going to control a group of people, what are you going to have to do first? You're going to have to control the scientists. And one of the ways to do that is to control what they can publish. By the end of World War II, the British government controlled the largest medical publishing house in the world. It was called Butterworth. But it wasn't all the British government, it was MI6, the British spy agency. At this time, Butterworth had joined the German government to create a larger publishing house, and they called it Pergamon.
So peer review comes screaming in 1965 through his company, Maxwell's company, called Pergamon Press. So Ghislaine Maxwell's father is like the first major attack on science.
Pergamon, by the way, in the Bible is known as the city of Satan.
To the angel of the church in Pergamon, these are the words of him who has the sharp, double-edged sword. I know where you live, where Satan has his throne.
Pergamon existed in Turkey as a sacrificial altar until it was rebuilt in Germany. Now, the first editor-in-chief of Pergamon wasn't a scientist at all. He was a spy. His name was Robert Maxwell. He was a Mossad agent and proven to be a spy for the British. People recognize the name because he's actually the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, the consort to Jeffrey Epstein. And his assuming this role was a shock to everyone in the medical industry.
It was obvious that he'd been doing odd things for MI6 in Germany already, and he suggested that we should subsidize him to buy a book business. I don't know of any other case. I was certainly never involved in any other case of MI6 buying a business for anybody.
I believe they've actually made up people and made up a whole branch of science, and that's the science of virology. If you look at virology, the man given credit for starting the science of virology is a man named John F. Enders. He's also given credit as the father of modern vaccines. What got my attention, though, right away when I was trying to find out who this guy was, is that he eventually won the Nobel Prize for being able to be the first guy to culture viruses.
Och här är då först professor Enders.
Now, I'm going to tell you, his paper that he won the Nobel Prize for, you can't read the original paper because they've bottled it up behind an institutional paywall. If I'm the chief of medicine at Harvard, I can probably get at it, but I can't get at it, and you'd have to pay a lot of money to get at it. Why do they care about a paper that was written in 1954? We know about his paper from his Nobel laureate presentation when he was awarded the Peace Prize in 1954. So who is he? Well, on the Nobel website, they explain his history. They say he took off a year from Yale to go fight in the Air Force in 1918 and was given to rank of ensign.
1967 marks the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the United States Air Force.
There was no Air Force in 1918, okay? It was the Army Air Corps. We didn't have an Air Force until World War II timeframe. And number two, there are no ensigns in the Air Force ever. That's a naval rank. Not only that, they claim that his PhD was in 1930 at Harvard. He got a PhD, purportedly, in bacteriology and immunology. The first immunology PhD was granted in 1974. And yet here we have the Nobel site telling us he's got a PhD in immunology from 1930. Who's making this up?
Your doctor can surely help when you're not well. Anne is just fine. We take good care of her, the doctor says. Isn't it good to have a doctor who can help you?
Because after this paper was published and was elevated by publications like Pergamon, virology basically replaced the science on parasites as they continue to impact our health. So by this point in the 20th century, the medical industry gave us two paths. One was petroleum medicine that was designed to prolong our illness to create wealth off it, and the other was homeopathic medicine found in nature that was derived to cure the illness. A good example of this was Royal Rife's groundbreaking frequency device.
As far back as 1920, I conceived the idea and the possibility of when the causative agent of malignancy, so-called cancer, would be discovered and found and proven, that it would be caused by a microorganism. Of course, reception that I received that far back from the medical profession and scientists was nil. But I kept at the work, and I succeeded in eventually isolating a virus. First, I began sectioning tissue of every known type of malignancy. I sectioned over 20,000 of those, cut them down with a special microtome to very thin. Some of them were only a micron in thickness. Arthur Kendall and I, working jointly in the Pasadena General Hospital, succeeded in isolating what we classify the first filterable form of bacteria ever seen. Now these filterable forms are very minute in size. The smallest of all is the one from the BX, which we isolated from cancer. But that is the smallest and is less than the 1/20th of a micron in dimension and highly motile. We succeeded in isolating this organism, this BX, using a Kendall media.
Many people are talking about common illnesses, with which we are all familiar, of course, being the result, it turns out, of parasite infections in humans. And before you go thinking that this is a third world country issue, that these small animal systems don't exist in the United States, well, you might want to think again. The CDC acknowledges that cancer is a parasitic infection. Hell, even the American Cancer Society, which is a federally funded agency and a puppet of the DoD mass genocide operation, also acknowledges that cancer is actually parasites and their egg sacs.
Every day on American university campuses, many students and professors are working very hard to discover a cure for cancer.
The year 1910, 0.07% of people in America die from cancer. So you might ask yourself, with such a little bit of death, why would they make what later became known as the American Cancer Society?
Members of the Senate, members of the House, ladies and gentlemen, we are here today for the purpose of signing the Cancer Act of 1971. Dr. Detman, the President of the National Cancer Society.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would like to think that this is a wonderful Christmas present in the signing of this bill with this pen today. The 2.25 million volunteers of the American Cancer Society ask that I express their appreciation.
The question was, is this caused by a parasite or somewhat microorganism, or is it something else? That's always been a debate. And that debate has never been resolved. So if you go back to the literature back in between 1850 and 1900, you'll see, they just started using microscopes, and some people were able to see. And there was a couple of very important papers called this around 1898, several actually, which said that they saw these little organisms only in malignant tissue, not in healthy tissue. And so they were calling it the cancer parasite.
The microparasites described by Dr. Weber that you can see here can be found in the tissue of all cancer patients. Some examples. Here you can see a blood sample that has been dried over a flame. The patient suffers from leukemia. Here you see the blood sample of a patient suffering from liver cancer. Here the blood of a patient with bladder cancer. And this is tissue from the bladder carcinoma. You can clearly see the lively movements of the microbes. Here the diagnosis is that of lymph node metastasis. This is an almost mature gamete. He can be found in the space between the cells. And here a blood sample after a mammal surgery. You can see a dying leukocyte. Patient is suffering from breast cancer. Diagnosis: cell complex of an uterus tumor. This is the blood of a patient suffering from a lip carcinoma. And here cells of a lung carcinoma. In the lower left part you can clearly see red blood cells in whose innards there are lively microparasites. Here a tumor cell from a bladder carcinoma. You can clearly see the vacuoles, string-shaped structures. All recordings have one thing in common. You can see certain reoccurring types of microbes in all of them. There is no tumor tissue without these microbes. There is no blood of a cancer patient without those microparasites. The microparasites that have not yet been acknowledged by mainstream medicine as the cause of cancer have been comprehensively shown by Dr. Weber. They belong to two species. A. String shape, grown up. Their length is 2 times that of a red blood cell. B. Stick shaped. This is the most commonly found shape. The length of this gamete is about the diameter of a red blood cell. The youth form of both species are round or oval shaped. In normal blood tests, those parasites normally remain undetected, as they are hiding inside of the red blood cells. They are perfectly camouflaged by the exterior of the blood cell. The inner of the blood cell also offers plenty of food in the shape of oxygen and hemoglobin. The parasite enters as a so-called merocyte, the youth form, into the cell and fattens up and grows to its full size. 2 gametes inside of the blood cell can be seen here. When the cell has been eaten empty, the sexually mature gamete leaves the cell and looks for a partner to exchange DNA with.
We first have to realize that this is a false reality. There's something wrong with our reality. It's not just they're lying to us about a little thing here and a little thing there. There's a general overlay of falsehood overlying science in our world today. How do we get out of it?
As I was telling you about our family's health crisis, I was desperate to find out the root cause of it and not just go through the traditional routine of masking it with pharmaceutical drugs. And my wife, she was in pain. She was crying herself to sleep a lot of nights in pain. I felt that there was nothing I could do about it at the time. And so that was a very horrible time for us to kind of just watch that happen and look at the future that we had both hoped for and planned and been so excited about. My wife then had a diagnosis of anxiety and depression, got put on medications for both of these set of conditions. And what that meant was that she was then now struggling. She was dealing with a lot of issues with her self-worth, her self-esteem, and then now battling with this set of mental health issues that was out of her control, and just feeling out of control in her life, feeling that she could not control her temper, modulate her emotions, her mood. She would just lash out and lose her temper and be out of control emotionally, and then feel like, what am I doing? Why am I hurting?
Reading and, like spending all this time learning of how to be a better person. And I just felt like I was getting worse. Trying to do the right things, live the right way, help people. My husband and I at that time, this is around the time that Jonathan was into the health space, and we were sharing all this amazing news and all these testimonies of people having breakthroughs and doing all this personal development and helping people. Meanwhile, while I was dying inside, I was breaking, and I felt so broken, and I'm just like, when am I going to get my break? And I felt like, at the same time, I felt like my husband, the person that was the closest to me, couldn't see me either in the midst of it. And I just wanted to tell people, I don't know, I just wanted to just like, I don't know what's going on. And I just get angry, just be angry.
And I feel bad that I could not at that time know how to solve that problem, nor be able to fully empathize and understand and relate to her, to be able to actually understand what it was that she was going through. At the time, you often, certainly this was my case, I was looking at the surface. Now, I begin on a quest. I start doing a lot of work, taking my investigative journalism background and finding then a way to use those skills for the best good. And I had the opportunity to work with a company called The Truth About Cancer as a producer for them. Started traveling the world, traveling around America, finding these breakthrough cases of people reversing cancer. Now, All of a sudden, this issue with parasites then comes up again, something here, something to go deeper into to understand more about. And, I began to do more research and to my amazement, the solution would soon be more clear.
So here's what you need to know. We get sick because of three things primarily. We get sick because of electromagnetic radiation, because of poisons that they put into the environment, and because of parasites. Well, we now know that we are electromagnetic. Now, the work of Dr. Pollack up in Washington State, or the University of Washington in Seattle, he looked at how you get rid of toxins in the body. And it turns out the body works like a battery.
So light, you might say light creates this kind of battery. The question is, are we also solar powered? Do we use light to get some of our energy? We actually do. We engage in the first step of photosynthesis, that is the splitting of water into the negative and positive.
You actually have to keep a charge. You have a negative and positive charges, and you have this exclusionary zone. And when you have a poison in the body, let's say you're cleaning with Lysol because you're convinced that you need to, sterilize everything, which is not a good idea, by the way. But you did that, and you get some of these particles ingested in you and in your body. They act as poisons, but your body can handle it because it isolates them with a charge and it spits them out. And that's how we get rid of toxins in our cells. If you get too many and your batteries are run down, then you can't survive. And that is what flu is. So if you screw up the battery system for a variety of ways, you don't get enough sunlight.
So whenever you have the electrical EMFs that are going through, these are causing positively charged ions in your body. When you're born, you have a bunch of negative ions. This is the reason kids, they heal faster, they have more energy, they wake up easier, and they just go hardcore all throughout the day. Over time, as you grow older, you start to lose the negative ionization and start collecting positive ionization. Well, these electrical EMFs that are coming off electrical cords and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and everything else around us, even cell phone signal, these are positively charged ions that your body's picking up. So grounding, if you look at grounding, it's effective because it's an electron exchange. You have positively charged ions and the earth is a negative ground, and it's sucking these positively charged ions out of your body and it's replacing it with a negative ion. So your inflammation goes down. You sleep better. You have more energy. So instead of doing that, that's essentially what my machines are doing. I've taken my great uncle Royal Rife's technology and have successfully countered these positive ions. Through his technology, we have seen dramatic changes in multiple ailments. I work on EMFs, and I do electrical synapse through the body through electromagnetic fields. And it's kind of like with music, whenever you have something in sync and within tune, it works a lot better because it's resonant. And that's how these electrical synapse works. But it's also giving your body negatively charged ions and pushing the positively charged out.
So this all makes sense when you start looking at it. And what's happening, every time we've had like the H1N1, every time we've had a pandemic in the modern world, it's been associated with an increase in electromagnetic frequency. When they said a virus spread around Wuhan and was killing people, they didn't lie, but they were speaking the old tongue. In Latin, virus means poison. It does not mean a little germ. In my lifetime in medicine, what I've seen happen is they have denied us the technology, and they've demonized looking for these things. They made it a joke.
But we don't want to be told what to do. Well, I understand that, but now is the time to do what you're told.
The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind.
Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
One of the things that woke me up to the parasite problem is we're seeing all these people with turbo cancer, right? We're hearing all this stuff about cancer and these weird things happening. They're showing up with multiple cancers. People, I hear this from oncologists and medical doctors, they're saying, we see these people that have been in remission for years, and now suddenly they're breaking out with cancer everywhere in a very aggressive form.
I was the first pathologist in the world to say, guys, we're seeing an uptick in cancers. That's toxic spike protein has so many mechanisms that allow cancers to wake up, and certain cancer genes that it binds to and promotes mechanisms. everywhere I go, radiologists, interventional radiologists, oncologists, cancer surgeons like I met today. Cancer, cancer, cancer. 30-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 40-year-olds, reactivated or second shot, third shot, month later, breast cancer, stage 4 everywhere.
If you look in the cancer literature, research that's going on right now at the NIH, you'll find that they're looking very closely at fenbendazole, albendazole, all these anti-parasitic drugs for treatment of cancer. Now, they're not admitting that it's actually parasites are cancer. What they're saying is, isn't it interesting that these anti-parasitic drugs also treat cancer? There's been an underground use of this for a long time, but now the medicine doctors are kind of coming around to saying, hey, these drugs could have use, but they don't want to ask the next question, is parasites really cancer? Now, we also had, by the way, this isn't just cancer. Dr. McDonald, who's a pathologist, looked at very carefully, sectioned the brain and spinal cord of people that died from MS, multiple sclerosis.
They took these brains, 10 brains of MS patients, and the cerebral spinal fluid. They did a spinal tap on all of the deceased and evaluated their spinal fluid and their brains. They cut up the brains in little bitty slivers to dissect them and then lay them open. And they wanted to see what's in every single one of these brains of an MS patient and what's in every single spinal tap sample from every single MS's spinal cord tissue. 100% of every brain had roundworm parasites eating holes in their brain. Every single cerebral spinal fluid spinal tap sample had 3-inch worms swimming in the cerebral spinal fluid, called roundworms.
So I have lupus, which is another autoimmune disease, and I do sometimes have similar symptoms to MS. I've lost function of my hands and my arms before. I have seizures, all stuff. So I've been doing a lot of research on how to heal and cure autoimmune diseases. And what I found is that a lot of scientists think parasites are like the root cause of autoimmune diseases. So 3 weeks ago, I started a parasite cleanse. My health has improved so much. It's honestly freaking me out. My pain levels have gone down significantly. Usually, like, my entire body aches and hurts all the time. So that's amazing.
How many of you have been told by your oncologist that you have parasites in your brain? How many of you have been even suggested that it could be a possibility?
The lines are blurrier today than they were even at that time regarding microorganism developments. Because of new equipment, there's more that's seen than before. But what's happening is that all this emerging information is creating a revolution in the field. And now people are dealing with things that they didn't even know existed even 10 years ago. Mycoplasmas, nanobacteria, bacteria that are smaller than viruses. Right? People don't even know how to classify what they're looking at. It is such a chaotic soup. And there isn't a lot of money that goes into research around it. It's a highly undefined field. We're having to actually, there's been a language that's had to be invented even to talk about some of these things, to even name them.
Here's one thing you'll find, and you'll find it in years and years of experience, John, that it's an absolute true statement that I've found out over all the years I've worked with this work, and I've worked hard and sincerely and honestly. You'll find, by God, that 9/10 of the criticism is a cloak of ignorance. When they don't know themselves, then it ain't the voice.
Recently, in 1970s, we discovered that in people that have heart attacks, that have plaque in their arteries, we're finding at the center of the plaque is what they call calcium-producing microorganisms. And we found out they're nanobacteria. So we now have affirmed that nano-sized bacteria can exist because we see them there. So now they're saying, well, coronary artery disease, which is heart attacks, is an infectious disease.
Texas health officials say kissing bugs have infected at least 12 people with a parasite that has the potential to kill, and the parasite they leave behind causes Chagas disease. The disease has an acute phase, much like the flu to start, before it transitions into a chronic phase, during which up to 30% of people develop heart problems.
I've never left the United States. I've never even been on a cruise.
So it had to be here.
I was infected right here in Texas.
One of the things that I found was that a study done on one parasite, which is called Toxoplasma gondii. This is a parasite that is estimated to be infected in 60 million Americans. Now, That's just one parasite in 60 million Americans. Now, what does that mean? Well, studies done on this parasite showed that if you had that parasite, you were 7 times more likely to attempt suicide. These things are all happening all together, downgrading people's health, dropping their guard against the parasitic infection. Now, they grow. They can then get misdiagnosed as cancers. They can cause the growth of cancer in your body by creating environments that are a toxic slew that then cause a dysregulation of the body. And so let's say it's a heart cell or skin cell or eye cell. Instead of it making that proper conversion, because of the toxic overload, this is now dysregulation. That dysregulation causes the body now to produce these unhealthy cells that have not completely formed. These are cancer cells, and also they are cancer stem cells. These cancer stem cells are driving the growth of cancer and the influential factors behind the downstream issues, which would be the collective tumor, of which when you look at something like chemo will kill the tumor cells but not the cancer stem cells, and they'll actually cause a strengthening of the stem cells. So it would appear like a tumor is going down, but the cancer stem cells are growing.
Natural substances that could not be patented for huge profits were kicked out. They were actually criminalized. So you can see that we have all been pawns in this horrific scheme. I personally am a 3-time survivor of cancer. 2 primary breast cancers, where I underwent a radical mastectomy that took down my tissues all the way down to my chest wall, and malignant melanoma earlier in life. When I think at how vulnerable I was to the allopathic system, and I realize now that my treatments could have been healthier, easier, and without disfiguring surgery and toxic chemicals, I get angry. Anybody would. And I get sad. But I can't change what happened to me in the past. I can hopefully pass it on so that others don't have to go through a similar process of pain and suffering and disfigurement without their consent, without knowing completely what all the options are.
And I know it's kind of hard for people to grasp this reality that a medical professional may not know something about your health or the diagnosis that they are actually specifically trained to address. But most autoimmune diseases, most cancers I've ever seen in my practice who had been diagnosed with any form of cancer, the majority of them and those diagnosed with any autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia, lupus, it doesn't matter, rosacea even, they have parasites. And the moment you clear them out, all their symptoms disappear. Rosacea patients' cheeks all clear up. The big butterfly rash of a lupus patient clears up, and all their symptoms disappear. All their pain and all their joints goes away. You just don't know that this is what is linked to many of people's suffering, and why it is, if you're not addressing to get rid of the parasitic infection, why it is you are being prescribed anti-inflammatories and steroids for life, and why there's no other things being told to you to provide hope, faith that you can recover. Parasites are pervasive throughout the entire world. They are not exclusive to only third world underdeveloped countries. They are here in America. There's a reason why every animal we eat in America is treated with ivermectin, some kind of bendazole, which kills parasites and parasitic eggs. There's a reason why every cow we eat, almost every animal we eat in this country, has to be treated for parasites before you eat them.
A flesh-eating parasite that feeds on animals is working its way to North Florida.
First Coast cattle farmer Alan Roberts says it would take more of his time to treat and monitor the cows, which could easily then drive up the price of beef.
The worldwide salmon industry is trying to find a solution to a billion-dollar problem, a surge of sea lice. The parasites attach themselves and feed on the salmon, killing them or making them unsuitable for consumption.
It's another episode of As the Stomach Turns.
Just can't get rid of it on my mind.
This woman says she also found a worm in the salmon she bought at a Costco in Chula Vista.
I don't think this is all by accident. I think this is a very well-crafted plan. And one of the first things they had to do in this plan is they had to distract us. If we had been focused on classic medical education and thinking about the parasites that we had been treating people for in the past, we probably wouldn't have gotten sidetracked.
I read something, the World Health Organization said that by, I forget the year, some year like 2050, it will be realized that all cancers are related to parasites or a microorganism or some sort of microorganism. And that's pretty heavy. That's pretty heavy because I already told you that what we call heart disease now is a parasite. So they are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. You don't have to wonder if you have them. You have them. The idea is, how long can you keep them from winning? Because eventually, guess what happens? Eventually, funguses take over our body and recycle it.
They do know that in America, they can send a request for a stool analysis for parasites to Genova Labs and to Quest Labs and to LabCorp. But I'm going to tell you right now, the names of those tests are comprehensive stool analysis test for parasites. Each of them say comprehensive. And every time the medical doctor is going to get your stool sample report and it's going to say you're negative for parasites. Those tests are only screening for one of the 4 classified versions of parasites. They only screen for one in America, one. That one is called protozoa. Well, there's 3 other types called flukes, roundworms, and tapeworms. So just so you know, every MS patient has been found to have roundworms, and none of those labs are screening to see if you have any of those in your body. They're only looking for protozoa, which is professed to be the #1 parasite infection in Americans. So I'm telling you, if you do those tests, they're extremely limited. I said there's 4 classifications of parasites, 4 different types. Within those types, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of different named parasites in each of those categories of the 4. When you're looking at LabCorp, Genova Labs, and Quest, they're only testing for one protozoa of the hundreds of thousands. They're only looking for one. So if they don't see that one, they're going to tell you you don't have parasites. So guess why the majority of your medical professionals don't see positive results in these parasite screenings? They are screening of the millions of various kinds of parasites. They're only looking for one. But the MDs aren't trained about parasites in med school. They're told parasites only exist in third world countries. So parasites are a bigger deal than your medical professional knows and bigger than you know.
The reason they're called parasites is because they have learned to successfully avoid being detected and being killed. So if you went to the average infectious disease clinic and said, do I have parasites? They got a 99% chance of being told no. Because they're not going to find that. They're not hanging out in your gut. They climb in, they burrow into the wall of the gut or the wall of the bladder or the wall of the lungs. I mean, they can go anywhere. And they hide in that wall, and that's where they lay their eggs. All right? And only if an adult happens to come out in the colon will you see the adult form come out in the stool. But other than that, you're not going to see them. Can you understand that you have an egg, and then the egg is going to start to develop a body? That body is going to be made of our tissue. So basically, our immune system says, that's us, that's not them. There's no other. And it doesn't, and so it's not immunogenic, and otherwise it doesn't stimulate the immune system. If you undertreat them, in other words, you give not enough medicine to kill them, then they get disturbed and they'll migrate to another organ.
Keep in mind there are multiple ways to do a cleanse. I actually took an approach every month that our entire family did something every single month to cleanse and detox parasites. Now, this is not what we do right now, but for years it was really simple. I actually each month was ordering from other countries online. I was ordering ivermectin tablets. So I did that for years, and I would just make sure our kids, us as adults, were taking ivermectin every single month.
More breaking news this evening. Joe Rogan, an extremely popular podcaster, announced on social media today that he has COVID. In his statement on social media, Rogan said he has taken several therapeutics to recover.
Turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses.
I'm glad you're well, man.
Bro, do I have to sue CNN?
I don't know, do you?
They're making shit up. They keep saying I'm taking horse dewormer. I literally got it from a doctor. They won the Nobel Prize in 2015 for use in human beings.
Yeah.
And CNN is saying I'm taking horse dewormer.
Ivermectin, a dewormer? Really?
They are shaming themselves. No one has to shame them. They're shaming themselves.
No, they need to be
by doing
shamed.
that. Yeah.
They need to be called out and shamed,
Yeah.
brother. I am taking a regular dose, whatever. They're trying to build up of ivermectin. Ivermectin was a boogeyman early on in COVID.
You couldn't talk about it.
That was wrong. We were given bad information about ivermectin.
Now, we would only do one dose, so we were just doing it monthly as a way to cleanse worms and parasites. This is not what I use to treat parasites. This is very different. So in my practice, we treated autoimmune diseases from all around the world. 16 different countries came to my practice in both Tennessee and Texas, and 80% of all the people who had autoimmune diseases had parasites, and I never had to use ivermectin and never had to use hydroxychloroquine to treat those patients. I typically would use a 5-day on, 5-day off approach of using herbs from plants that actually kill worms of parasites, break open eggs of parasites, and so you would cycle these things 5 days on, 5 days off. The primary ones I used were wormwood extract, otherwise known as artemisinin, a plant, and it has some of the very same actions in the human body to protect you from parasites as ivermectin does and hydroxychloroquine. So I always used wormwood extract, and I used dandelion root extract, which is very anti-parasitic, and then we also used other herbs and plants.
Parasites are mostly encysted and they're in a kind of a stasis in these little areas around the body. And when you take your dose of medicine, whatever medicine you do, whatever you do to get rid of the parasites, the first thing they're going to do is get rid of the mother parasite. The mother parasites apparently put out some hormone or chemical or signal that causes the babies to just all stay encysted. So they're not out making you sick. They're not swimming around. But the minute you get rid of the mother parasite, these things start hatching out. And this is why you need to cycle the drug. You kill off some, then you let more come out of these cysts, you kill them off, and you have to do this over a long period of time. Now, here's where the problem is. If you wait too long in between doses, what will happen is you'll have such a big parasite hatch out that you will actually kill so many parasites your next round of drugs that you will get what's called a Herxheimer reaction. And what happens is these parasites will be suddenly killed, and they will give you like an allergic reaction to dead parasites. No surprise that your body doesn't like a lot of dead parasites. And you'll notice it. You'll notice your stools will change. You'll have all these things happen. It turns out everything cancer likes parasites like. They like carbohydrates, okay? And the solutions are a clean diet, low carbohydrates, cycling parasite doses until you can get yourself down to 3 days on, 5 days off, and then you keep, after a few months, you start spreading out the off time until you're down to maybe taking 2 doses of parasite medicine a month. And a lot of your doctors don't even know these things.
A 6-year, 4-year term in medical school, they get 19 hours of nutritional studies. That is the same as a 1-weekend course in 6 years. So when you go to your medical doctor and ask them, should I take vitamin C? They don't know. They don't know anything about vitamin C. Should I take vitamin D during the summer or in the winter? Most of them don't know either. So they're just not taught much about that or given much credence. In fact, they're just taught, if there's a symptom, prescribe the drug. And like I said before, wormwood I've used for over 20 years to help people clear parasites of all kinds, no matter what the form. And then there is a clover called red clover. It is an incredible herb at killing parasites also. This should be the staple for anybody trying to do a parasite cleanse. I'm not sure anybody knows this, but did y'all know hydrogen peroxide kills parasites? Did you know your own cells in your body make hydrogen peroxide? And every cell in your body will make hydrogen peroxide? Now, the only way you would see a whole population of people having a whole bunch of parasites as issues and diseases being diagnosed, but they are parasites, you have to understand the gravity at which all human beings have less hydrogen peroxide production in their body. You just need to go do the test, and then you can educate your medical professionals what they were not taught in med school. And they were not taught about parasites, and they were not taught about nutrition.
There can be parasites that can cause necrosis, and these necrosis can cause cancer on long term, but there can be cancer that can draw in all types of parasites that makes it worse. Chlorine dioxide eliminates parasites in blood. We know that. Because malaria, it's old malaria, Jim Humble, 100% efficiency. We have to understand that parasites is not the same like worms. If you have a big worm or a parasite, I'm speaking here mostly about single cellular parasites like trophozoites of malaria or Giardia lamblia. Most of the parasites are single-celled, and this is much more. Has nothing to do with the worm itself. No, it's not that the worms are eating you up. No, it might be the case, but it's the last case, or 1 in 1,000, if so. And basically, we have to understand chlorine dioxide eliminates by size. This is, for example, a parasite in blood. It's difficult to detect, and it's like finding a needle in a haystack, because it's really. But you can see that yes, we have parasites in blood as well, and this will be killed by chlorine dioxide. What we do now in the foundation basically is the standard cancer protocol for advanced cancer, not initial, but advanced people. So they start with protocol C always, and they rise to 4 milliliters of CDS in water, in a glass of water per hour. Whatever they do, or if they eat or they don't eat, but all the day. This is basically what they do, and then we have the drip enema over the night. You can find it in my website. It's some new stuff, and this is very equivalent to intravenous use, or even better. So you have a constant oxygenation of the body in day and at night at the same time. And what we saw is in around 3 weeks, well, there is a result, directly a result. In most of the cases, you can see it reducing. You make an enema, and you are not make an enema for washing out. You make it with saline solution, like an injection, but you with a dripper, and you drip all the night. Every second, one drip, one little one. And after time, well, it's absorbed, because the main function of our large intestine is water absorption by the body. And this absorption is constant, so you don't have to go to the toilet. You can have a constant oxygen level, high level, and charge. This is what it does at the same time. And this makes a huge result. So basically, if you want to cure your cancer at home, take as much as you can from this stuff. Don't overdo, but go ramp up. Make these 2 protocols, and most of the cancers will go in 3-4 weeks, with exceptions, obviously, as I mentioned. But well, this is the way how to do it, and to go the other way. We make the surroundings stronger, and the cancer will get reduced by itself.
These are the things that we're warning, we're saving people from. Now, when it comes to cancer, it could be the big part here, because that's already been a huge issue. We've already got 50% of the human race facing this, and we've got treatments that are working super effectively, like chlorine dioxide, which has been heavily demonized. There's people in jail for talking about it.
He's hanging in there. He and his sons are in prison, and it's getting to be, we're on 4 years now. It's getting to be quite brutal. He's hanging in there. He's very well rooted in his faith, obviously, but he's hanging in there. It's getting to be more and more unbearable every day. Trust me.
What aspect of it is unbearable?
Well, they've separated the family for a while. They moved them to a facility in Texas for a while, where they were under psychological evaluation. And then they've just moved them around, sort of like diesel therapy, right? Where you're just constantly on the move. Last I spoke to them, they were back in Miami, incarcerated down there. But again, the very people that have incarcerated them are also the same people that come from agencies that know that chlorine dioxide actually treats cancer. There's studies in the NIH that show you that if you inject chlorine dioxide into a cancer tumor, it gets rid of the tumor inside of minutes. And from there, it'll spread to the distant, organs or lymph nodes. So this whole thing about you can't treat cancer is a complete abomination. And not only that, they're showing that ivermectin and fenbendazole, Fen-Ben, if you will, if you use those concomitantly, they're having tremendous results on fighting cancer as well. So and of course, Brian Artis, if you talk to him, he'll tell you cancer is from parasites, and you have a lot of parasites, so which is why ivermectin and Fen-Ben work so well. Ivermectin kills the actual parasite, and Fen-Ben kills the egg sac, so you're eliminating all of it. And again, another abomination of the National Institute of Health, our CDC, our FDA, that are now demonizing people who are providing easy, some very homeopathic treatments for diseases that don't even need to be labeled a disease, because as Mark Grennan calls it, it's dis-ease, right? Your body is not at ease. You have a lot of inflammation going on, or you're out of balance, so other organisms are allowed to flourish. It's sort of like taking a probiotic every day to keep your gut health really strong, so that you don't have discomfort with either indigestion or just issues, digesting food down the line. And which, of course, your brain down here is directly related to the brain up here. They're interconnected. And the government is all about breaking you up, separating, dividing, and making enemies of every body system and everybody, for that matter. This is what they've been specializing in for as long as I can recall. I haven't seen the government do one thing to help the people ever that didn't result in them profiting wildly, and in the end, the destruction of the said people they were supposedly helping.
Remember the song by the Carpenters, "Bless the beasts and the children from this world, they have no choice, they have no voice." So we have to be their voice. And I have my pets, my dogs are all around me too. I mean, they don't have a choice. They're like children. They come so innocent. So if we shut up and we take it, I mean, it's been difficult. I mean, the attacks are crazy. You're like, wow, that's crazy. I've got friends sitting in jail for doing nothing but helping people, which is
Mark Grennan.
Mark Grennan, Dr. Pedersen, Dr. Reinwald, these people are sitting in jail and they've done nothing but help people. It's just devastating. So, and the governments of the world make this impossible for, they can really not fight it, and especially not in 2024. It's
wow.
So anyway, but those of us that still have a voice, you can't stop helping them, because they don't have a choice. We have to.
Wow.
It's
That's
like,
beautiful.
if you saw a child on the street lost, you would stop and you would help the child, because the child is by themselves. That's what we're supposed to do. We're adults. We're supposed to help and not hurt and harm. But
wow.
Humanity has fallen so far. But there's still some good. There's still some good apples on the tree, like we were talking about, son of yourself and other colleagues of ours.
There he is. Mark. Mark. Hey, it's me. Hi, brother. God bless you. I got your stuff okay. Well, I look similar to your picture, but I thought you were having a longer beard. They cleaned you up, huh? Yes, I went to the front. They told me to come to the back. Anything you want to say to the people? This is your first day out for how long? 4 years. Unbelievable. Today's a day of victory. Let's get to the car because you're on a time schedule. Well, just wanted to share that with you, my brothers, my sisters. That's my Pastor Mark Bishop Grennan. Yeah. There he is.
I'm free.
He's free. Woo! Free at last. Hallelujah. God bless you. I'll get you tuned in a little bit later. We got to get to the car.
My mind is blown, and I can see so much about what is possible and the potentiality of what is actually driving cancer and what is there to solve these prolific, horrific, profound cancer cases that have no real solution in the mainstream Western field. But here they are being completely solved and turned around. All of a sudden, my wife then starts becoming open to these kinds of conversations. I then start putting her in front of doctors that know what to do and understand these kinds of problems. Now, my wife then is with her blood work, all the doctors getting you to do all this blood work and then trying to give you a supplement to kind of try to balance those markers when all they're doing is band-aiding up an issue and not getting anywhere. She's then still trying all the different treatments. Like, for example, she'd have to get a chiropractic adjustment every day, and then she'd still lose the adjustment, be out of sorts, in pain again, do it again the next day, the next day, the next day. And so all of these Band-Aid approaches were not getting to the root for her. So now she then sits in front of a doctor that I put her in front of.
I brought my test results with me, and I didn't think what would come out of that would be hope. But we got there, showed Dr. J the test results, and he basically said, "These look like red flags for parasites." I got so offended, and I was like, no, there's no way we're talking about this. This is not like, what do you mean I have parasites?
She then has this kind of wide-eyed, white-faced response. She's not happy about this. She's actually feels offended now. She's immediately offended. She's like, "What? You're saying that I have parasites? I have things inside of me?" So this is her reaction. And then he's just calmly, yes. And so, but like Shrek says, better out than in.
Within 3 months, all of my health issues that I ever experienced, even from the point I was 13, went away. I had no more symptoms of anemia, no more symptoms of hypoglycemia, no more symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome, digestive issues. I could eat for the first time in years whatever I wanted, really. It was freeing. It was really amazing. And I still kept passing parasites 3 months after.
Lori was battling this issue with infertility without us realizing. Now, all of a sudden, as soon as she's gotten rid of the parasites, her body makes way for a new organism, which is life, her own child, not an unwanted organism that is destroying her health.
Won't be long. I'm there before the setting sun. For you to
That beautiful boy he's the symbol of a new beginning. Not only that, just knowing that I gave him the most awesome beginning. I can feel good that I gave him a good start to life. You know, I detox my body. It's healthier. I feel like I have the ability to be a mother to him.
We have worms, little itty bitty worms. We've got worms, wriggling worms.
Do you remember in Eden when Eve said, let's get feeding? Now all of a sudden they're scheming and feeling all jealous and greedy. But there wasn't no serpents, no siree, there weren't. Even Adam had worms, so wondering if it was worth it. Now with knowledge forbidden, Yahweh said, are you kidding? Another alien invader, good luck, I'll catch you later. There are worms in our butts, and they're driving people nuts. We have worms in our butts, they keep messing everything up.
We have worms, little itty bitty worms. We've got worms, wriggling worms.
You know those pharaohs in Egypt? Well, you will never believe it. They worshipped kitties whose feces was filled with wormy diseases. And the snakes on their crowns when you look at them upside down. It's the parasite hiding in plain sight. Like some suspicious traditions of bricks to bite the baby children. It likes to ride in saliva. It's why you kiss the bride. There are worms in our butts, and they're driving people nuts. You have worms in your butt, and they turn you into a slut. Ever wonder why you're cranky or crave anal hanky-panky? It's these worms in our butts, now we become completely cucked.
We have worms, little itty bitty worms. We've got worms, wriggling worms. We have worms, little itty bitty worms. We've got worms, wriggling worms.
Did you never learn about the Knights Templar? They had a fruity ritual to be a member. When your turn was up to be inducted, you had to kiss another knight in his buttocks. Ever wonder why there's more and more pedos? It's the wormies squirming in their heados, like the bugs whose brains are infecting. So they climb until the birdies ingest them. As the wormy birdies fly into the sky, the pedos spread the parasites. If you doubt this massive deception, just try and mention ivermectin. There are worms in our butts, and they're driving people nuts. We have worms in our butts when you listen to your gut. It's the viral hive that's hiding inside your host intestinal lining. Why these worms in my butt keep on telling me what's what?
We have worms, little itty bitty worms. We've got worms, wriggling worms. We have worms, little itty bitty worms. We've got worms, wriggling worms.
There's a reason you're consuming all this sugar and drinking lots of booze and using hookers. When Rowdy Roddy put on his sunglasses, he suddenly could see their wormy asses. 'Cause lurking right outside our dimension, the hive might